good to go.
It is 8:01. Call the meeting, the regular meeting of the Shenango County IDA to order, and we'll call ourselves in.
Corey here.
Zeno.
Crawford here.
Woodford here. The IDA mission statement is the mission of the Shenango County Industrial Development Agency to advance the health, prosperity, and welfare of the county citizens by helping to retain, create, and attract businesses through appropriate investment and incentives.
For now, that's our mission.
For now, yes. We'll be revisiting that very shortly. First order of business, approval of minutes from April 16th, 2025.
Corey moves.
Corey moves.
Second.
Zeno seconds. Discussion? Any additions, alterations? Roll call?
Corey, aye.
Zeno, aye.
Crawford, aye.
Woodford, aye. Carries. Financial report. John?
Okay. Today's financial report, we're going to do a little different than usual. We're going to have on page 6 is where we normally start. We're going to start there. And what happened here is when we sold the Norwich Meadows property, we just put that into like a rent income account, the check that we got, and then we needed to work with our auditors. So this is pre-auditor adjusted numbers. Good news is, we got another copy, you guys see, which is going to go over to sales. So we're going to run through the pre-one first. John, you don't have a copy of that. I got it here.
Okay, thank you.
And then we'll jump to the other one. So as we're looking at page 6, which is statement of financial position, some things to note. Some things are fairly steady there. Down where you see Norwich Meadows lease, it's the top part. It's $13,989. That's going to be going away. Finance leasing, non-concurrent, that's going to be going away. You're going to see this in a minute. Land industrial parks down in property equipment, that's going to go away. Okay, so there's fairly significant changes. You get down to current liabilities of $45,070 deferred inflows, that's going to be going away. And then down below, our net activity is going to change. So this is kind of reflective of before we got the auditor's adjustments, and it's not really probably the best picture of where we stand at the moment from an asset perspective. But we're going to go through that just here briefly. Any questions on that so far?
We'll pause just for a second with two, because I know RC knows, but I'm not sure. For Norwich Meadows was a piece of property the IDA owned and sold to Norwich Meadows. It was up where the Earl B. Clark Park was. And so that was pre my time here. Jeff probably was on the IDA board back then, Jeff. And so Brian's not here. He would have been the only other person that would have still had that experience. But it was a piece of property that we wanted to sell. We did sell, and we're happy that we sold. It was a process going through the transaction, but we did lose money on that deal. You're going to go.
Yeah, we'll go through that in just a minute.
Perspective, and then from an accounting perspective, how we treat it. We'll walk you through that.
Page 7, we jump into receivables. Just so everybody knows, you'll see 3 line items. The 1125, the 3,000, the other 1125 or 90 days. We are actively working with those vendors on collecting those. Tyler and I are working on those, so we feel pretty confident we'll get those monies.
Biggest issue that we've had, I'm not worried about hybrids. You guys heard everything that they have to say. The biggest issue that we have is the feeling by the Norbit Solar or Norwich Shenango Solar that they don't understand why they owe the fees. There's just a question on what's a fee versus what's a pilot payment that they have, where there's fees associated with these that they have to pay us, and we're just backing into it with some accounting people out there.
Yeah.
Right now.
So one of the things that Tyler and I are going to be working on going forward is to put together a sheet that says what happens after the sale. What can you expect annually? What are the expectations? For kind of the buyers, so they can kind of the people get in these.
Good for all of us.
Everybody understands what should be the things we got to do every day. Tyler's got a nice start in other documents, so I won't steal his thunder on that. But I just want to let you know.
I think they would welcome that.
They look pretty good. Any questions there? If we go to page 8, just payables, it's really nothing. It's pretty quiet activity there. Just normal bills, things we're working through, legal things. We get to page 9 where we get into the revenues and things. You'll see things that are a little bit different. You'll see the Clark Park Norwich Meadows 55718. That's the check we received at the sale of that property. Again, it's in rent. That's not going to where it's going to end up. Utility reimbursements. What we did is we've been going back, and that's really February through April reimbursements, and it's more than just everything regularly. It's really East Main Street. So going forward, that'll be corrected. That title, it's kind of a combination of things. And then the East Main Street rent was really the IDA receives rent from DCC and Commerce of $800 a month each. That's $1,600 times 3 months. So we went back and billed that rent. So we did a lot of cleanup work this month and getting things in order. You're going to see the same thing down on the expenditures for contracted services, where it's $22,000. That's really a combination of various components from December all the way through April. So a lot of stuff here. So I don't want to throw you off, but a lot of things are kind of back work. Even the advertising and marketing for $1,250, that was really for stuff that was billed out from 23 and 24 that I had to get into this account. So we did a lot of cleanups. I think going forward, we're trying to put a process in place that keeps it clean. And we won't experience this again, but I do want to bring that up to you guys and make sure you're aware.
Makes sense. I have questions for John.
Yeah, I want to go back to page 6.
Yep.
Standard liabilities. Explain the deferred inflow of resources.
We're gonna
That
see
one-
that. You're gonna see that just in a minute.
Oh, okay.
So
That's on this sheet right here, Mike. It's a little confusing because that's why I wanted to start with the fact that if you, are you gonna switch that?
Yes,
sheet,
I'm gonna
John?
switch
So if
over
I say- I'm gonna walk through the first 3 lines because I can help you through those because this is what we intended.
That's this one.
that's this
Okay, this one
document
right
here.
here, Mike. So
Yep.
we had that Earl B. Clark up there that has turned into Norwich Meadows. We knew when we sold that piece of property that we were going to take approximately $100,000 loss on it. We bought it for $238. We were gonna sell it for $133,620. That was the negotiated price between the IDA and these new owners for that piece of property. Not unusual for IDAs to invest in developments like this, right? They said, okay, we're willing to do that, and we're going to rent to own. We're going to lease this piece of property to own it. So everything we pay you goes towards that purchase price. So everything's going to add up so that we lose $104,380 if all of those transactions occurred within a calendar year. That's also how we would account for it. So if all those transactions, if they rented it for a year, then paid us off in a year, the rent and everything would go to, would be the net purchase loss would be $100,000. Unfortunately, due to accounting rules, it looks worse. And John's gonna walk you through why. Because basically, and I'll give you layman's terms, but it took me a minute to understand it. The rent and the down payment of $60,000, they prepaid 60, then they paid about $34,000 in rent, was paid in a different calendar year than when we closed the sale. So now the loss looks much greater because now we're only getting 41 grand for an asset that's still on the books at 238. So now it looks like we lost 190 grand. We didn't. We lost 104. We just lost it in different years. Does that make sense to everybody in layman's terms? They'll walk you through the accounting treatment.
Got it.
So
Yeah, and so you can see this. We tried to put together a little sheet here that's about as simple as we can make it. It's hitting about 6 or 7 different
I
accounts.
figured you all could get it because he made it so I could get it.
Sal did a pretty good job explaining, so I don't want to reiterate, but you'll see down at the end, our net sales price was $41,718 for the year. It was on the books for $238. We had a loss of $196, but then we had 3 months worth of rent that we had to recognize for this year in 25, so it brought that loss down to $192. We had at closing, we got a check for $55,781. The $41,718 was part of that, then the purchase price, and we got reimbursed for $14,000 worth of legal fees that we paid out to Von Schoening and King. So that kind of gives you the idea. Now let's flip the next page. There's no page numbers because we didn't have it part of the thing, and you're going to be looking at the statement of financial position, and you're going to see things. Remember all those things I showed you are going to disappear, including the deferred inflows of revenues? Gone. And because they're all related to those properties. And so at the end of the day, you're going to go down, you can see net activity of minus 242. So, a fairly significant change in the financials. Everything else, stayed fairly the same. The receivables stayed the same. The bank account stayed the same. So, not a lot of change here. Just we're kind of removing an asset off the books, and you're also removing associated liabilities off the books, and kind of got a cleaner version, but it does impact because of that loss. The financial is pretty good. The next two pages are receivables and payables. There's not a change there. They didn't change at all. We start to see the change a little bit here is under revenues. If everyone can see the ones, the statement activities with the revenues. You guys second find it right there. Now I added a new line called sale of property. You can see the negative 192,601. And then also the rent there, we had to take that away. So those are really the major changes there. Down on legal expense, under expenses, now it went negative because we applied a $14,000 credit as part of the sale.
We're not going to talk about legal fees again in a minute, and I'm going to have a more general conversation around legal representation at that time as well.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, for the month, we ended up net activity of negative 193,743. But really, that's driven a lot by two things we talked about. The sale of the property drove a large loss, and we also showed a lot of extra expenses in different activities in the month because we were playing catch up, trying to do that cleanup between DCC, IDA, Commerce, Foundation, all that activity that we wanted to clean up and get things to a better place. So I apologize, it's a little bit of a confusing month, a lot of moving parts, but we did want to bring this to you. We just got this yesterday afternoon, so we quickly ran through and reran the financials and got you some numbers so you'd be at the most current place.
So essentially, just we're catching up.
Yep.
Is really what it amounts to.
And we're going to be putting a practice in place to stay current. That's the next
John's
thing.
done a really good job of moving our processes. He's done a lot of, again, it's a matter of, again, I said this and I'll say it clearly, Kathy Joe did a wonderful job for the role that we tasked her with at 20 hours a week, right? Doing that job here part-time. John's here more than 40 hours a week, and he comes with 30 years of experience in a variety of different accounting roles. So he brings, this is indicative of the same type of work at the DCC, Commerce, and the Foundation. It's just literally making things easier, more clear picture of what's going on. And it's very confusing, by the way. If you guys don't, the cross payments, and who pays who for what, and where the money goes, and the sister organizations, and how you break out salaries. Again, it's complicated. And so he does a very good job of taking it from that complication and making it clear for us and for our team.
The only last thing I have, which you guys, I don't think you have a copy of this. When we work with our auditors, they send out notices to different groups, especially like our legal groups, and say, are there any other kind of expenditures that you haven't billed for yet? And just so you guys are aware, related to pilots, and Tyler and I are working through this right now, Bond Shouting King said there's a little bit over $62,000 worth of legal expenses that are related to pilots that they've been kind of holding on to until some of those pilots close, and Tyler and I go through. So we did ask for a breakdown of that, but just so you know, that's not shown anywhere, even as a deferred liability or anything. 62,000,
And that's what the fees are to pay associated with the pilots, right? That's why you collect fees. That's why you make money on these things. It takes work for Tyler. We're going to talk some more about that when Tyler gets to these pilot conversations. That's why you collect fees for. But what I don't understand is why would you hold those until so that
and we weren't aware of the amounts either. So we're going to be asking them to change their practice and give us a monthly statement of where things stand. Because we did get a breakdown. Tyler and I need some time to review that and figure out.
Well, it's easier then to account for which pilot gets which bill each month, right? So I billed you for, I'm sure they're going to break it down for, this was for Norbit Solar, and this was for, Puckett Solar, but it'd be much easier to track that if you were doing it. Plus, it would make the urgency associated with somebody who hasn't paid us their $94,000 much more apparent, right? If somebody hasn't paid us $94,000, it makes it much more apparent.
Well, not only which pilot specifically, pilot A, B, C, but also the little exercise we just went through in which fiscal year.
Right, RC. So it's good.
And there's stuff from 2023 on that listing, right?
Yeah, there's some old stuff on there, and on projects like there's a lot of expenses related to the Smyrna Solar project, which kind of fell off the radar. I'm not really sure where we're at with that, so I don't know at what point do they say, okay, let's bill the Shenango County IDA for that project. But
that's what happens. not just with these pilots, but it's a lot of what John is helping us do. If you wait until the end for everything, it's very complicated to unravel that yarn, right? Like, but if you try to stay on top of it as you're going, it's easier. And that's really what he's done. Because what we would do is wait until, we had time where literally we would wait until we didn't have any money left in our accounts before we would then go to make a transfer. I'm like, we have to anticipate those things differently. So cash flow. So it's just process stuff, which is, this is the next level of process improvement that you want for sustainability and organization. And he's done a great job, and it's on the right track. Just want to make sure you guys understood it, and because there's a lot of moving parts.
So I'm assuming we'll hear more about that down the road.
Oh,
Yeah, and they
next
sent
month
a
we'll
pretty,
Yeah.
descriptive breakdown of what all those fees are. They're all there. It's just a matter of going through. And some of it we have paid since the start of the year. Some of it was related to like the hotel project that we just paid. So it's just a matter of going through and just understanding what their process is and our process. So,
and getting a statement how much has been paid versus unpaid. So what's the true net liability, where we're at? Are they all for open projects? Like you're saying, if you got a closed project and they've never built it, or they may not be aware that project's not going anywhere, and they're holding on, waiting for them to actually close someday, and it may never close. So we just got to figure those things out.
Right. Any other questions for John or Tyler related to the financial statement or the S&K? Not? Entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
So, Tina moves. Motion. Mr. Crawford seconds. We'll vote.
Corey, aye.
Reno, aye.
Crawford, aye.
Woodford, aye. Carries. Bills and invoices, John.
Yeah, so we gave you guys a listing of all the bills and invoices. I got to bring those over to you guys for signature.
I think they're right in the.
Right
Yep.
on page 2.
Yep, right in the agenda.
Yeah, those are just to bring you guys up to speed on any kind of bills or anything we have. You'll see the large one like Shenango. That's just kind of the money transfers between the organization. Bonchoni King is some of the legal services. There's nothing really too
Nothing
exciting.
extraordinary there.
No, window cleanings, just
As an advertisement for anybody, though, I use the window cleaner at my house over the weekend because we have some windows that are 40 feet off the ground. That kid kills it. I mean, he is look at these windows that he cleaned around here for $440 up and down.
Yeah.
I mean, he's if anybody's looking for work, this kid's really good.
Where's it out?
He's just moved here from.
Right
I
here
try
in
to help
Village.
with his marketing because he calls himself downstate window cleaning.
Yeah.
I know you should switch that to upstate window cleaning. But he's local now.
Any other questions on bills and invoices? Not, entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Corey moves.
Second.
Zeno seconds. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll vote.
Corey, aye.
Zeno, aye.
Crawford, aye. Woodford, aye. Carries. Pilot updates. Tyler.
Yeah, I had handed out a separate kind of grid-like piece of paper here that was not included in the packet. These, I generated this at the end of last year, and I showed it at that point, but in response to our last audit and tracking our current pilots, I kind of put this together to kind of keep myself on track. But we have received, obviously, a lot of information from all of our current pilots for the year 2024. So I've started to update this grid. We are still missing some information from some of these folks. So it's just a matter of doing our due diligence and going after some of that. The two I'm going to kind of point out here at the bottom is pilot billing and site visits. Historically, we really haven't done site visits, haven't done any yet, and realized that is on our radar. So we hope to accomplish that. Definitely now that the weather is nice, we'll do that in the next couple of weeks. Pilot billing is just confirming with the county that these folks are in fact paying their pilots. So some people submitted the receipts right from the tax department with their paperwork. Some didn't, but it's just sitting down and confirming with the county tax collector that we're all set with some of that. But not a whole lot of information came from these folks. There really wasn't a whole lot going on. Nobody really did any capital investments, so there wasn't a whole lot of stuff to track. Some big stuff for me just to kind of sit down and figure out would be like the energy generation and making sure that folks are actually producing the energy that they say. As you can see, Tiffany Solar is not necessarily doing that, and it's a matter of finding out why. So just doing our due diligence, keeping a track record of all, just so the next time the auditors come in, we can at least say, hey, yeah, we've got this information, we've asked why, tracking it, all the X, Y, Z. So happy to answer any questions related to any of that.
And much of this is directly attached to your Paris report.
Correct.
Frank, we have to do annual reports to New York State, and IDAs are often criticized for the lack
We
of
had a
detail.
bad audit.
Which for the lack of detail that they get, and some of it is how many dollars did you actually spend? How much power did you actually produce versus what you promised you were going to do? Did you do what you promised? And Tyler's doing a good job at making sure that we're closing that loop.
We had again, my responsibility, an ignorance of what we were supposed to do after a pilot was finished and not having a good, not being well versed in that. Tyler has literally created a tracking sheet now where we can do that. I'm going to ask Barb the next few weeks. She's going to start helping us do some site visits where she can go out and visit what are the people there, are there jobs there. It's part of our requirements. We got dinged for that, not doing that, right? So all those things, and again, it's just another set of eyes, and it's another piece of work that is absolutely required by IDAs to do. It's why we get those fees. And again, some people you heard that PSIC, they have 5 direct employees. One of them just works on pilots. That's what they do, right? So,
I think the audit was late last year.
Last fall, October, November. Is it an annual?
and again, the people on site, Frank, gave us a pretty good audit. The people who hit their bosses said it was too lenient. They said we were making progress, but they weren't rewarding effort. So it was okay. I got it. We'll keep working.
Yeah, it was a New York State Comptroller's office.
Yeah.
Audit.
Yes, the Napoli's office. Took it seriously.
And it was a follow-up to prior.
Yeah.
So it was looking for progress.
We have progress, but he still says it's not there.
So,
And it was mostly around record keeping with pilots. That's really what it was. It was record keeping with pilots.
okay.
All right, if there's no questions on that, we'll move on to our pending pilot applications here. The first one I have listed is lifelong agricultural. I had included that application in the packet. There was obviously some, I don't want to use the word concern, but we want to do our due diligence checking that out just because it was an unusual application for us. Our attorneys had some reservations on it just based on the work, and they did do some research. There are other IDAs in New York State who have allowed cannabis manufacturing take advantage of tax abatements. However, those would seem to be larger companies that had several throughout the United States. This specific applicant, they have some history doing it, but not as much as I would say some other IDAs have approved. So they had some concern there, but just wanted to make sure we did our due diligence. I have since talked to this gentleman. He was hoping this was a way faster process than it is. Relatively upset that nothing has been approved to date and was going to start looking elsewhere in a different state. So I need to confirm with him whether he's pulling his application or if we want to continue. I had explained several times, this is a month-long procedure.
Who is this gentleman?
His name is Caleb. They're out of the Northwest Oregon way.
Okay.
And obviously, I mean, it's a property in Sherburne. We'll love to see developed and turned into something, but this is not a fast moving
No
process.
problem. We have a Utah policy, right?
Yeah.
So that's how we do. We're doing all the right stuff.
Norbit Solar Farms, we are still waiting to close on that. They are hung up on one tiny detail of a lot of our current solar projects. The solar companies sometimes change hands from one company to another pretty frequently. We have in most of our properties that way, they would need to inform the IDA when they do that. For some reason, Norbit is not understanding why they would need to do that. And they're kind of hung up on that stage of it right now and kind of been going back and forth attorney-wise. So just kind of letting the attorneys duke that out and waiting to close on that. Payne Solar, we had a little bit of an update from them last month. I was hopeful they wanted to update their application and send that in with some updated construction costs. I was hopeful of having that before this meeting. They did not get it to me by this meeting. They are meeting on site with NICEAG this morning over in Bainbridge, just to kind of talk about the interconnection design to make sure they're all on the same page. So I'm hopeful in June we'll get some updated figures and we can move that one along, because that one's just kind of been hanging out, waiting.
Nice connection has been a major issue.
And I know they waited a long time to get with NICEAG, and so I know that I understand why there's some updated costs. It just has been a little bit of a slower process.
So Tyler, I'm gonna be with some people from NICEAG specifically tomorrow. There's things it's Carly Norton's boss, and there's stuff that you need to try to follow, but if I would,
Okay.
let me know specifically what you're looking for.
Okay.
But I'm gonna be with him tomorrow afternoon.
The last one, Principal Holdings Group, that was the hotel project here in Norwich. I just received the first initial closing documents on that yesterday. So that is now with the principal's attorneys to review. Hopeful to close that on that here, as long as everything looks good.
They're highly motivated to try to close
Yes.
quickly because for a number of reasons. I think they want to put shovels in the ground by July.
But that one's moving along pretty good. So, and the only other thing, well, I'll just mention Highbridge now because I don't see it in the old business. Highbridge, obviously, they came last month. They pitched kind of a presentation of where they're at with the process, some updated figures. Kind of been at a standstill since then. They want to have a meeting as early as next week with us, their attorney, our attorney, and the project manager on a 4-way call, just to make sure we're all on the same page, review what the options are, and go from there. So I'll coordinate with that with you, with RC and Sal. We'll do that as early as next week and try to get that ball rolling. So
Good.
Sounds good.
Questions for Tyler?
Yeah, any questions for Tyler?
He's gonna keep right on talking.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about hybrid. We had a conversation with them at the last meeting, and they were reluctant to explain to us what their energy generation capabilities are or what is expected of them.
Right.
I guess they said it's proprietary, but you have information here from other solar companies. So my question is, if the projects don't generate electricity, is there a legal avenue to pull the pilot? Because we're not creating jobs, basically. We're creating energy, and maybe that falls into the mission statement. But if you're not getting either, is that enough reason to pull a pilot? In other words, I'm trying to incentivize something positive out of these things.
I'm not sure, Mike, honestly. That would be a question for our attorneys.
But I think it's really, really great that you got this grid. It's
Yes.
super helpful.
If I recall correctly, at least at the front end, and probably it's industry-wide, there's reluctance to disclose anticipated production capacity. But if I recall correctly, one thing that was said last month was, once built, when it does come time for Tyler to populate this grid for a wind project, that they said they would be they have no issue with telling us what their
Yeah, they have to.
Yeah, what their actual
Okay.
production numbers are.
Correct.
But prospectively, that's, as I recall, was.
That's exactly what they said, RC. They don't want to share it up front, Mike, because they don't want somebody else to come in and outbid them for the property. If they said, holy cow, we could put 6 windmills here because it could generate X number of dollars per acre. Now they're in a competitive process, and they might want to do it in other areas, and they don't want to share that. Once they do this though, Mike, they have to, because Tyler has to report that. And so I haven't reviewed our contracts, but I'm guessing 100% yes, that they've committed to yielding those types of energy results, and they're obligated to pay based on that contract. I'm not a lawyer, but I'll go look at it.
But when you read this, you say, wow, there's a lot of non-available areas in the box. I didn't know if that was something that's across the board and popular in the industry, not to reveal that information, but we'll be
They
watching.
have
Great.
to, yep.
Thanks,
Yep.
appreciate your explanation.
Okay, old business.
Public hearing guidelines, kind of just continue to kick this can down the road. We didn't include it in this packet again, but we had sent out some public hearing guidelines that were suggested to us by our attorneys, just to have as a basis for public hearings.
There's actually no action to take on it. There's no, we can send it out again, Tyler, John will send it out. Again, if anybody has any questions regarding it, it's just a refinement of our process, but there's no documentation in our bylaws. There's no, this is what it's a guideline, it's a process, just like John's created within our accounting world. Okay.
So we'll plan on sending those out again. Again, we don't have a
send them
public
out.
hearing coming out, so there really is
Send them
no
out, send them out
urgency
in the
on it.
next packet, just so everybody has.
Just continue to include that so we don't forget about them. Everything Baker release, I had, again, handed that out the last month's meeting and reviewed that. That lease had expired, so we needed to redo a new one. I had shared that with the folks over there. They had told me that they had executed their right to purchase the property, which was news to me. I do not have record of that. So that would have locked them into the old rent. So I'm trying to figure out the next steps forward with them. I did ask, well, we need to have something in writing saying that you would like to purchase it, and we obviously need to make them the moves to close.
Let's set up an appointment with Matthias and those guys.
So we'll, that's been put on, the new lease obviously been put on hold until we figure out the steps for that. So, because if they do have the right to purchase and they want to purchase, then we'll sell them the building, obviously. I just want to make sure we're not just having it hang out.
Yeah, we probably don't want to get too deep into this in open session as far as,
Right.
Contractual note.
And I'm gonna ask you what executive session anyways, RC.
But yeah, let's just continue doing what you're doing.
Yep.
And we'll wait to hear from you. Water District.
Water District, we had met earlier this week. Isel, if you want to take that.
Yeah, I will. So the map at the end of the table, real quickly, demonstrates what could potentially be a water district that we're trying to create that we're trying to help facilitate. And when I say we, I mean RC. And a group of people that we got together here, RC was engaged in this project 30 years ago. And the concept of trying to create a water district between North Norwich, town of Norwich, the city of Norwich makes more sense than ever. It made as much sense back then logically, but now there's different motivations for all three of those municipalities. Back then, the basic situation was nobody needed to. All of the towns were flourishing on themselves. They didn't need to try to figure out how to create this type of network. So right now, if you think about the city of Norwich, water ends where NBT is north of Norwich right there, and it ends it doesn't cross the river, it ends on Rexford Street. Water crosses the bridge on Rexford Street, but sewer does not. South of town goes to Walmart, I think. It's sewage treatment plant. GE, thank you very much.
State Leesburg.
Goes to GE right there. So what we've talked about is what would need to be true to create a water district so that we could potentially get water. Started out with the idea of getting it to the Woods Corners plant. Y'all see Chobani's taken down their for sale sign. They've said, I'm not sure we're contemplating what to do with that. They've built a big plant up in Rome with 1,500 jobs. And is there anything that they could use it for differently if it had sewer and water there? Frank has a big piece of business there. I know you guys have went down this path before and contemplated different ways to treat your water, but you use a lot of water. Is there anything that might be in the future give Cary Bio a reason to expand if we had sewer and water going from East River? So now what we're trying to think about is how could we take water from the halfway bridge, cross there, and south of town, bring it north from there, and cross again at Bosse's, just north of Bosse's. Growth at RTG, growth over there, Savern Memorial, Pet Street Station is contemplated needing water. Bus garage over there needs water on East River Road. North of town, you're talking about the airport, you're talking about being able to spur towards the country club, the rehabilitation center. It's a big project. The beauty was we had a bunch of people here from all of those municipalities on Monday of this week. Everybody was shaking their head that this makes sense. People that were engaged 30 years ago, like Mark Williams, came back and gave us some input. People from the town that have been there, and people from North Norwich. So it's a worthwhile project. The state would be incredibly supportive, I think, of this project. We've talked to them about it. Eric Scribner's on another call right now but I think the state would be incredibly supportive of this project. And Omar Sanders has asked for engineering of what it would look like, and then you can cost it. And once I can get them something, and I'll see these people from Empire State Development, Shane, I'll take whatever advice you and Matt, the planning department obviously would be engaged in this thing as well. What do we need to do? Allison was here, she did the maps for us, so the county's deeply engaged in this, trying to help us figure out how could we do this, and what would need to be true in order to make this happen. Because all three municipalities think it's real and possible and beneficial to them. They were running spurs up into different places, thinking about how they could do it. RC was like, best part about this was, when we did this 30 years ago, people whittled it right down to a project that wasn't worth doing. These guys are expanding it out to say, go ahead, chip away from that. And we still got a really big project to take on. And it'd be multi-years. This wouldn't be something that you would, you see how I have to do Route 12 right here. So think about what you would have to deal with to do this, but it's a worthwhile project.
Yeah, and probably part of the reason the project failed many years ago was it might have been a little too small, but really its intent was Route 12 north to the Airport Industrial Park and a spur out 320 Woods Corners out your neck of the woods. At the time, both Sheffield as well as Procter and Gamble had some interest, but a lot's changed over the years. Part of the markup on that map right there, actually, the task of the group was to kind of define the geographic area that we might be looking at. And yeah, they've got a pretty big scope there. Maybe that's too much, I don't know, but they've set the bar pretty high. And if we have to chip it down a little bit, that's fine to make it economically feasible, but that's a pretty comprehensive thing. And one thing I did say to him the other day, this is not an IDA saying, this is what you need to do. We're just saying, we think there's some value here. How can we help you get there? And really, that's kind of our role in this.
They have to want to do this. RC made that perfectly clear. He made it, and he did a great job of making it clear to all of them. Because again, at first we started to pick at the fatal flaw. Well, why can't we do this? But then literally when RC is telling them, hey, listen, this isn't an IDA. This has to be a municipal initiative. And went around the table, and every one of them said, yeah, we need this, we want this.
And Sal and I didn't have anything to do with those markups. We just,
Yeah. They started going on the map over there.
Where do you think it should be? And they did ask for some advice. And again, Mark Williams was here. He worked for the city for many years. And I have somewhat of a past knowledge of what the infrastructure is around here. And they did there was some debate, should we go up this road or not? Probably not worth it. It might cost a lot of money to put in the ground. And but they did. They came up with that.
Well, the big deal is the city needs to do a minimum $20 million project down there.
Right.
Is Eric Scrivener back yet? No. 20 some odd $1 million project down there to the wastewater treatment facility. So why not do a $24 million project, and why not try to tap into those wells that exist underneath Giovanni? Why not try to figure out how to put a pump station up there, wherever we need to do those things closer? Contemplate this as you're going to do that project. Don't put a Band-Aid on the situation. They need more inflow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the towns need water. So how can we make that possible?
So we had multiple representatives of the city. We had 2 aldermen, the mayor.
Yeah.
We had 3 representatives from the city, reps from the town of Norwich, North Norwich. And that was, after we were done, I said, Sal, that was a pretty big deal. I mean, it was a collaborative effort.
Yeah, meeting again next week to go over this map. Allison's redoing it. And so talk about next steps. Next step, and the good news is, honest to God, I would have thought this was a pipe dream. We asked LaBerge, an engineering firm to come in, and Labella, could be another one, to come in and give us their input. Neither one of them want to, because they want to be able to bid on the project. I think it's real. When the opportunity comes to bid on it, they don't want to be like they've already had the inside track, so they'd be precluded. So we're excited about it. Any questions on any of the old business? We'll turn to the Oh, one more, I'm
Oh,
sorry, I see
actually, one
Lee
more,
Avenue.
yes.
Everybody, Jeff got one, of these. Go to page number
11.
11 in your fax, in your packet.
Essentially, it's a notice from New York State DEC. Back in the early mid-90s, there was essentially a hazardous waste site that was identified on Lee Avenue right here in the city of Norwich. The reason this is an IDA issue is because it's, the area that was contaminated was the railroad bed itself, and had nothing to do with the railroad or its activities. Actually, it was neighboring historical use of a neighboring building, an industrial building, and essentially that they dumped their solvents out the back door on the.
Shoe factory, right, RC? Shoe factory.
No, it was the former, actually was the predecessor to Unison, it was Hercules.
Oh, okay.
Now it's,
NPI labels?
yeah.
Yeah, that's right,
It was
that's right.
Chris Ulatowski.
I know right where
It
you're
used
at.
to be Label Gallery.
Yeah, I know right where you're
Ulatowski
at.
Salt at NPI. Still operating.
So essentially, in a nutshell, they've cleaned it up. It meets all current guidelines and it'll be under long-term management. There's no action from the IDA, but again, the IDA is not on title and property, so. You know,
We approved this easement, for those of you that were here historically, we approved this easement, and we had to give them the ability to go in and check the site. And literally, I got a nice note from Nathan Fenno, for those of you that have dealt with it. Those don't happen very often. This is a really good one to put behind us, and that it's over. So it really is a non-issue now.
And they literally did just dig out, and the report says, but they dug out 1,400 tons of material, which is quite a lot. And all the way. So that's strictly that way.
If there's no questions, you can just keep turning that page, because my first thing will be to talk about my executive update, is the mission statement. You guys can tear that off and compare it to page 1 if you'd like, and compare it to our current mission statement. But one of the things that I was asked to do is actually page 2, I apologize. Yeah, it was to look at crafting a mission statement that better reflected the things that we're working on. And so I took a stab at that with the help of artificial intelligence, some other IDA research that I've done, and really what we're working on. So I'll read it to you, you guys can read it yourselves, but the mission of the Shenango County Industrial Development Agency is to serve as a catalyst for sustainable economic growth in Shenango County by fostering partnerships, attracting investment, and providing financial incentives that support job creation, business expansion, housing development, and community revitalization. It speaks more to being a catalyst. It speaks more to being, like, what are we trying to advance the health, prosperity? Do we own that, or not really? That we don't really, to your point, RC, own the water. You're supposed to be a catalyst for the water district, if it makes sense, right? Catalyst for something. So that's really what other agencies do. This is really something that I think pretty reflective. If anybody has any questions, I'm open to wordsmith it.
What I would suggest, since we just have 4 members here.
Yep.
Maybe we'll hold this off.
Okay, I see. We don't have to vote on that. I just wanted to let you guys know I took the action.
But I think, Tyler, for next month's purposes, maybe we want to make this kind of a priority for discussion. Maybe we'll have some better.
Okay, we'll send it out. John, we'll take it out as an action item that people can come back if they feel like, I urge you to compare it to other partnering agencies and just try to see, does it make sense?
No, at first glance, and honestly, I didn't see this in the packet. I skipped right over it.
This was the last page.
But
So we'll take
first
that,
glance, it
we'll do
looks
some
pretty darn
work.
good to me.
I know our previous mission statement before our current one, we wanted to include something about energy, clean energy, because it doesn't fall under job creation, business expansion, housing development. Or job creation, it creates one job maybe.
And Taylor, when you say that, it made me think of that, when that John Peace Act was here from Herkimer County, one thing he did kind of point out, one takeaway I had was, his IDA, the Herkimer County IDA is more of a catalyst. kind of get, I don't want to say meddle in things, but they get involved in things that maybe is not directly in their wheelhouse, but they help get things done. But one thing he did say was, if you're gonna do it, make sure it's in your
List
mission
them.
statement.
List them. So you're right, Cal.
Yeah.
He said that, list them. He said, if you're gonna get involved in housing, why don't you say housing? You're gonna get involved in clean energy. Okay, that makes sense. We'll take it back. Give us a month. That'd be fine. I would try. I just want to.
No, that was a great
Yeah,
point.
it's a good catch. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So I'll continue moving on then with the rest of the executive update, if you will. Strategic planning grant, actually, that's good. There's no update. It's with the state right now. As you guys know, Tyler was able to help us secure a $100,000 grant to help us figure out how to put together a lot of these pieces of the puzzle: housing, visitor economy, clean energy efforts, infrastructure improvement, strategic guide that will help us act. That 3-year plan, everything about that 3-year plan should act as a catalyst for the 2050 vision. Everything we do should be like, you hear Hamdi Lakai talk about how did you build a yogurt empire? I painted a wall. That was the first thing he did. And we need to know what are the things that we need to do to achieve that 2050 vision, but I don't have any update. Workforce Development Initiative, we've now run 2 pilots with Sarah Casellas. She was here yesterday through Morrisville. Essential employment skills and basics of manufacturing, introduction to manufacturing. What we've realized is that the students that we were initially intending this whole project for are not as good a pool of candidates for these jobs and this training as we had hoped. They're not as engaged, and that's because it's not coming from the top down. This isn't an initiative where, I promise you, if the state says you need to start getting the life skills, we'll have home ec again in school. We'll have, general customer service skills, but it's not. So the schools, all 8 of them, want their students to be prepared. But honestly, if you guys think about this, and I challenge any of you to tell me I'm wrong, because I wish I was, BOCES is preparing people for technical skills, right? They're giving them technical skills, welding, cosmetology, things like that. Schools in general are preparing, that aren't going to get those technical skills, are preparing kids to go to college. I mean, it's not different than when I was in school. They're teaching you, if you're not going to BOCES for a trade, they're not teaching you in school how to go to work at Carey Bio. They're just not. They're not teaching you how to go to work at MBT. Back when I was a kid, they taught you technically, so you could go get a job like that if you had to, right? But they're not doing that. They teach you college. They admit that. The principals, the superintendents admit that. College preparedness. BOCES teaching technical skills. But they're not teaching they are now, they do, they have life skills. And so that's where I thought BOCES was the world for that. BOCES was the world to take that. But BOCES has their own agendas and things they're working on. Remember, they cover 3 counties. And being a catalyst is one thing. Being the owner of it is another. This has to be owned by somebody. And then we break down the barriers. So we pivoted to Morrisville. Sarah Casellas, very confident. She tried to open this up to students. And because, again, we haven't figured out a way to teach it at night yet. And then, again, she taught it to 20 kids that took a manufacturing class. She had 3 kids finish that could potentially be capable of getting a job. Only 8 of them actually finished the class because they weren't required to. So we're going to pivot. We're meeting next week with Broome Community College, SUNY Broome, who has a very robust workforce development program, micro-credential program. Their difference is they only have 4 credentials that are not degree-bearing, not credit-bearing, but they have 100 that are credit-bearing. And that's what they do. Tompkins County Community College does the same thing over there. I don't know what classes they teach, but we're meeting with them on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week to try to understand how can Morrisville do this? Because Sarah Casellas needs to get Morrisville to be the catalyst. If she can't, honest to God, I'm going to ask one of these somebody to do this, because the IDA can't, Commerce Shenango can't. We need somebody who says, I want to put a workforce on. So the facilitator for this conversation next week is the Association of Manufactured Technology. Carol Miller, nice person. She's putting this together because that group can come here now and give manufacturing. But they're a consultant group, so they get charged, they pay for it. So we can bring these skills though. If Frank Crawford and Kerry Bio need a more skilled workforce, I'm gonna find them. I'm just not gonna do it. I'm gonna get somebody, either AMT, Morrisville, Broome, because Unison, Kerry Bio, Allergen, MET, Ford Mutual, they're all saying, we need it, we need this. And these are people that can do their own training, but they need that entry-level person trained. I just don't have it. And I know it, I'm not barking up the wrong tree because it exists. In Goddard County, it exists right over in Oleana, Excite Center, middle of downtown, it exists. And we'll figure out there.
One thing I did mention to Sal the other day was that, in doing so, he's gonna try to mine, I can't speak entirely for Sal, but he's gonna try to mine the expertise of SUNY Broome, TC3, et cetera, but falls short of implementation necessarily by those organizations, because if we see large enrollment increases with a community college, oddly enough, that hits the bottom line over in the county budget, because there's such a thing as called the chargeback, and any resident student that takes courses from one of those community colleges, actually the county ends up paying about a third of the tab.
Well, here's the beauty of what we learned, RC, and honest to God, I take that counsel. I told RC over a year ago, I tried to look into that because, again, that whole thing is weird to me, and it's an entanglement that I tried to figure out a way to save some money to pay for this program.
Mm-hmm.
But the good news is, RC, our target for this isn't kids.
Yeah.
Our target is adults.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could get SUNY Broome to teach it, it wouldn't be for kids. If I can't, I want Morrisville to do it. I want Morrisville to thrive. That's my goal. Morrisville,
Yeah, and
I want that campus to thrive. I wanted to teach Sarah how to do it. But if, and what we talked to her about was, can we just have SUNY Broome provide us teachers to teach you here in Morrisville at night and for adults, so that there is, and I think I can get the state to pay for it then, RC. I don't want the county to have to pay a nickel for it, and I don't want students to take it, because I believe, like with those college classes, and the reason that it's hard to untangle is parents love that program, because they go to these classes for nothing, and they get to take these classes for next to nothing, and then they go to a college, a SUNY college, and they got a full semester of tuition paid for. Now, the weird part that most parents are gonna find out, if they haven't, the kids stay for 4 years anyways. And so, like, nobody gets out early unless you're highly motivated, like Sophia Rue, or you're paying for it, you're like yourself, like I was. So, but you can't take that away, parents freak out.
And as Sal said, his primary goal is to get SUNY Morrisville to do it. That's one of the reasons the county's always been very supportive of SUNY Morrisville, is because we saw that as potentially an avenue to reduce our community college liability, which is 7 figures now, and it's growing quickly. But if a kid goes to SUNY Morrisville, the Norwich campus, it's not a community college, there's no charge. It's an antiquated system that should have been fixed decades ago.
I'm gonna try to help Sarah make it more antiquated. I'll try to get us out of here, because I know I want to finish on time. We had JLL here, Visitor Economy. You guys know one of our tasks as a tourism and promotion agency for the county is to make sure we're spending our dollars well, and trying to create a visitor economy is more than just trying to get people to come here. They were here last week, took a tour of our facilities. They're going to come back again. They left here, honestly, very impressed. Like us, they think there's something here. If you think about what they've taken away from us, this is not a tagline, but it's something that they truly want to try to help us develop. The beauty of our community is that it's undiscovered. It's the rural nature of our community. It's literally undeniable. There's an authenticity. People love it here. And once you're here, or if you're from here, it's unforgettable. It's a place that you feel committed to. They're going to help us build those tangible assets and truly create a visitor economy. I'm really excited about the work that they're doing. I'm going to give you more of an update once we get their feedback and their specifics. I do want to go into an executive session. Before I do that, I do want to tell you one other thing that didn't make it in there was Last week, you guys know this pro-housing community initiative, that Tyler's taken the initiative on going in front of the board of supervisors and talking about why that's so important, because you have to be a pro-housing community to try to attract housing and different grants in order to be community that can get the New York Forward, the DRI type grants. Tyler also got with a group of mayors and spoke to them about that as well. And then BNG picked up on that, did a piece on the television about it, and Tyler spoke. We had a developer call him, and came here last week with two other gentlemen. I can't remember what, I can't remember his name. He's from Green, and he does work in the Triple Cities. Legitimate developer came here and said, Norwich is a pro-housing community. It's ripe for investment. Give me a list of all on-market and potential off-market properties that could be developed here into housing. And literally, it's because of the pro-housing designation that Norwich already had. He also is very familiar with the Navy building in Oxford, another pro-housing community there. But this guy is the guy who's working with that Adam Weitzman, who's the billionaire developer on that Davis College project. So this is a very real potential developer that wants to come here and he looked at the Hayes office building and said that price was cheap for that building. And this is a guy who knows how to pull the levers on historic tax credits and all the different incentives that are out there in New York State. So we're doing the right things to attract that type of effort here. And I want to make sure that Tyler's work with that stuff is starting to pay dividends. We'll have more of that for you hopefully in the future. He wants to come back next week. Now that he's got this project, these sites. So hopefully we can take that and move right through the county. And when a guy like that comes, it attracts more people. That's what we need. I briefly want to go into an executive session, I see, but we will not take any action coming out.
So if I could get a motion to roll two things together, go into executive session and then subsequently adjourn after executive session, we will not be taking any action. Corey moves, Corey moves.
Second.
Zeno seconds. The vote?
Corey, aye.
Zero eye.
Woodford, aye.
You can stay.
Could we get the bills and invoices too? I
To the-
don't have them. The
Bring it over
bills
right
and
now.
invoices?